welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's lovely to see so many lovely smiling faces. Thank you. Well, I guess everyone here has something in common. And it's not about the technology. And I don't really think it's about the theology of ethics. I think that the thing that we all have in common is that we care about people. And our focus tonight is how to make technology the very best we can to help other people. Now, I'm sure you've all had experiences, and those experiences have shaped who you are and perhaps how you think about other people. And perhaps more importantly, they prompted you to make other people's needs your needs. So tonight, I hope you're going to add your perceptions of AI ethics to those of our speakers. On our agenda tonight, there's an opportunity for you to speak up and say what you think. We've got an opportunity before we have a break for pizza and some more wine, and then another one afterwards. So if you want to consider all that's been heard before you say something, then that's fine. And then we'll return and hear a roundup from our speakers before a final vote. So in the room tonight, we've got members of the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists and their guests, and people from the 10 charities that have so far joined the AI ML Learning Exchange. Now, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but the AI ML Learning Exchange was created by the WCIT charity to help charities engaged with or planning to use AI, on the understanding that those charities share their experiences and any lessons learnt. And we're aiming to provide some thought leadership, some practical advice, and where possible, some pro bono assistance. And tonight, it's our first themed event. And it's also a golden opportunity for our WCIT members to meet and to welcome the charities. But before we hear from our distinguished speakers, I would like to establish a baseline. And you know how we techies are. Always like to measure stuff. So I would like everybody to vote, if they will, on the motion for tonight. And this is so that we can check later on to see if this evening has changed your views or confirmed them. So if you will, on your seats you should find a red and a green card. And if you agree on the motion, there's no such thing as AI ethics, just ethics, please raise your green card. And if you disagree, you've got to vote here. Please give one green one. If you disagree, could you raise the red one, please? So, have you counted the green?
I have. The Greens have it.
I'd like to know the numbers so we can.
Sorry, 17 Greens.
17 greens? It must be more than that.
No.
Greens go up again.
Greens go again. You're right, 25. For cash.
So, is this the fourth amendment? Could we have the red ones again, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 red. Excellent, thank you very much. Well, to start us off with the main event, I am delighted to welcome Professor Richard Harvey. He is Professor of Computer Science at East Anglia University. And Chris Rees, who is the immediate past president of the British Computer Society. And to speak on the motion, this House believes there's no such thing as AI ethics, just ethics. I shall hand over to Richard.
Thank you, Maxine. I'll come and stand over here. Is that what you wanted me to do? Yep.
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm also the WCIT professor at Gresham College. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I've spent most of my life working in AI. I've never been more insulted in my life than being said that I cared about people. I'm a computer scientist. I mean, we don't care about people. That said, I do want to speak for the motion. And I want to start with Marshall McLuhan, who introduced the term moral panic, but it was refined by that prominent sociologist Stanley Cohen. And Stanley Cohen said there are 5 stages of moral panic. The first stage, someone, something, or a group are defined as a threat to social norms or community interests. Second stage, the threat is then depicted in a simple and recognisable form by the media. Killer robots, I think we're talking about here. 3, the portrayal of this symbol rouses public concern. 4, there is a response from authorities and policymakers. And 5, the moral panic over the issue results in social changes within the community. So I'd say we're about sort of stage 3 or 4 when it comes to worry about ethics, wouldn't you? I mean, Cohen was writing in the 70s, but it's quite an old idea. I mean, I found something in the writings of Charles Darwin actually pretty much on the same idea. You know, here we are again. I think I would say technologists have introduced some new ideas. Everybody accepts them gleefully because these ideas are useful and really helpful. Then several years later, after everyone is using it, all the old folks wake up and realise they want to ban it. Well, people, people out there, I've got news for you. Just because something is new, it doesn't mean that we have to regulate it. The laws of the land still apply. And just because new technology can do something quicker, cheaper, better than the previous system, it does not mean that our ethical thinking is wrong or wrong-headed. That's a good thing, actually, because ethicists are not speedy thinkers. Technologists are speedy thinkers, though. And so by the time we've done the ethical thinking about MySpace had been and gone. And what can be done about that? If technology is going to spin off these ideas so quickly, what does it mean for the ethical considerations? I think what it means is you've got to understand the basis of these technologies. If one understands that mopeds, scooters, cars are all motor vehicles, then we can develop frameworks of practice that cover the lot of them. So the traffic laws apply to a Model T Ford as much as they do to a Tesla Model F, if it's a Model F, whatever it is, that high spec thing. In the parlance of AI, this is called generalization. The idea of you looking for the general. So ethical thinking in the realm of AI, I argue, needs people who understand AI. So much as I respect Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk and other luminaries, to the best of my knowledge, they have not produced a single AI system between them. It's a strange feature of AI, actually, that the brainier the person, the more they seem to come up with crackpot ideas about AI and its consequences. Roger Penrose, Stephen Hawking, John Taylor, the neural networks man, they were all suffered from this disease. My own personal view is they're so familiar with being the top dog in the intelligence chain that they become sort of maudlin and introspective about their talents being automated, despite this being highly unlikely. In fact, they're often doubly wrong. They're wrong about how technology will extrapolate, and they're wrong about the speed of development. Okay, so that was my point 1. Doom-laden predictions about AI are invariably made by people who have never worked in the field. Such people have a point of view, of course, but I'd like to treat them as similarly impressive as my prognostications about Norwich City Football Club. I know nothing about football. Okay? To use a technical argument, authority arguments only work if the people making the arguments are actual authorities. And most of the people making arguments about AI know nothing about it. So my second point, taken at face value, really has nothing to do with AI, but don't worry, I'll sort of weave it back in. That there are quite a few tech companies out there whose business model is your data. The idea is that we users sacrifice some of our privacy in exchange for free services. Fair enough, you might say. But for some reason, many consumers didn't realise that when commercial concerns give you something for free, there's usually a payback. Of these, Facebook is notable, since it's a company with bad practices. Who knows it? But there's also Google, which is a company with bad practices who deny it. Both have recently appointed full-time ethicists, by the way. What a job. You wouldn't want to be a full-time ethicist at Facebook, would you? And I think, as Facebook and Google are leading exponents of AI, I think there's a confusion in people's minds about AI and sharp practice. But Apple and IBM and Microsoft also work in AI, and they're not in the data business. So my point 2 is a sort of variant of the Hitler argument. Hitler was a vegetarian, but some vegetarians are perfectly nice people. So naughty companies working in AI does not mean that AI is naughty. Very important point. Journalists get this wrong all the time. So, in practice, I argue that the ethical issues of AI are no more and no less than the ethical issues of everyday life. People might be killed by AI. Well, people are killed by people every day. This debate is taking place quite close to the birthplace of Jeremy Bentham. And Bentham would argue what matters is the balance sheet of good and bad. Is there a point where, for example, self-driving cars are safer than human ones? This point, sometimes trendily called the singularity, is a point at which it's dangerous to continue with human drivers. Now, no new ethics are required to come to that conclusion. And who is to blame when an autonomous car harms someone, people will ask me. You say, well, who's to blame when a threshing machine harms someone? In the UK, farming is the most dangerous profession, so hence threshing machines. And to which the answer is, well, it depends, doesn't it? Was the machine being operated safely within its parameters? Even autonomous cars cannot drive across water. If you made it do something stupid, well, more fool you. Or was it designed badly? So certainly there are going to be new legal cases as a result of AI, but no new ethical position required, I argue. Will different countries come to different conclusions on these matters? Well, yes. Definitely. Currently around the world, the age of consent, you might be surprised to know this, ranges from 11 in Nigeria to 21 in Bahrain. What is acceptable in one place is reviled and criminal in another. Plus ça change. Should one have a right to know if AI is making decisions for you or about you? Yes. At least in Europe, such rights are recently enshrined in a directive that is now known as the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which are doubtless the scourge of many people in this audience, by which I mean a number of innocent people have been greatly inconvenienced by a new regulation designed to protect us from a few bad eggs. So, how should we handle the ethics of AI? Well, I'm not saying that is something to be left only to the technologists, nor is it the preserve of the few. But this is hardly news to any of the charities in the room. You have difficult situations to deal with every day. You already have codes of practice and guidelines which are legal and rooted in ethical frameworks. Furthermore, if you do not behave ethically, then the consequences will be pretty dire for you. Your funders will desert you, would be my guess. Okay, so finally, I've got to the meat of the argument, which is I've sort of dismissed doom-laden predictions from Luddites and people who have an axe to grind. That was my point one. We've avoided working with companies who want our data, the unscrupulous companies of this world. That was my point two. And we're developing our own codes of practice, and we've been doing this for the whole of our existence. Point three. So what do we have left? Well, of course, AI raises serious ethical issues. I'm not disputing that. It's serious technology, and the potential to change people's lives is very great. And in this room today, we have people dealing with the most serious of problems, dealing with the most vulnerable of people. And those charities are, in several cases, so swamped with work that their inquirers are literally dying before they can be helped. I'm sure you're familiar with the protocol in drugs trials, which says that if a drug is proven to be very effective, then it's unethical to continue with the trial, because the trial inevitably means that some people who could be helped by the drug are denied something that could be really useful. I feel the same point about AI, and this is my final point, point four. Do not, under any circumstances, put additional ethical burdens on AI. The consequence will be to deny vulnerable people access to one of humankind's most powerful discoveries, and that really would be unethical. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Well, that's quite a few things for us to think about there. Very good points, well made. And so perhaps we can welcome Chris and see what else he's got to say.
Thank you, Maxine. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate was billed as the Battle of the Titians. Now, it may be a battle of the Titans, but I'm sure I speak for Richard when I say that neither of us is a Renaissance painter. By AI, we mean, and I think Richard would have subscribed to this, narrow AI, not artificial general intelligence. That is, application-specific AI, the current state of the art. AGI, espoused by those luminaries that he said had never built an AI in their lives, and I'm sure he's right. The idea that a machine could act like a human reacting to any situation with common sense. That's either so far off in the future, as some gurus argue, as to be irrelevant, or it's never going to happen, as I believe. Now, I have to demonstrate that there is a real distinction between ethics as traditionally understood and AI ethics. We're talking about human ethics, though when decision-making is delivered through the medium of machines that are taught decision-making and then go on learning on the job, their decisions take on an ethical dimension that may then be divorced from the human creators, owners, implementers, users. I'm going to consider 6 ethical issues that normally arise in relation to AI. First of all, bias. This is the ethical issue that arouses the greatest interest and concern in relation to AI. Infamously, it's been proved that facial recognition systems work far better for white people than black people, and in particular for white males than black females. Systems that advise judges in the USA whether to grant bail are similarly biased against blacks, despite the originators trying to avoid it. However, such biases are learned from humans, so they're not unique to AI. Discrimination based on gender and racial biases take place all the time without any technological assistance, let alone AI. So one for Richard. But there is a difference which makes even such widely hailed biases AI-specific, and this is that the system will learn the bias and then replicate it in its decisions more widely and faster than humans can or do. Therefore, the dissemination and circulation of the bias is much greater in AI than otherwise. Scale and speed change the nature of the offence, arguably then an AI-specific ethical issue. Second, the effect on employment. While there have been exaggerated claims of the effect of AI on employment, jobs for truck drivers and taxi drivers will be decimated by automated vehicles, for instance, the counter-argument that new jobs will be created so there's nothing to worry about is also false. The problem is that AI will destroy jobs in the short term, probably on a large scale, before new jobs are created. And the skills required for the new jobs may be difficult to acquire for those who are displaced by AIs. Is this unique to AI? No. It's happened many times before, from the Industrial Revolution onwards. There are differences this time in that it's the mental powers of the human being that are being displaced by machines, rather than just the physical powers, but in ethical terms, there's no difference. Third, harmlessness. Any tool can be used for good or ill. A knife can be used to cut bread or stab someone. Guns can shoot people or vermin. Similarly, AIs can be used for harm as well as good, such as spearfishing, or taking over autonomous vehicles and turning them into weapons. Both unethical, of course, but arguably, as both my examples show, can be and are being perpetrated without AI. This is just ethics. In the field of warfare, AI-guided drones can be deployed to choose a target and decide to attack him without human intervention or control. These are known as lethal autonomous weapons systems, slightly unfortunate acronym, LAWS. Drones are widely used as weapons now, but the decision to attack, to kill, is a human one. The pilot may be thousands of miles away, but he's still in control. If the target is moved into a hospital or amongst a group of children, the operator would abort the mission. An AI would not be able to make such a sophisticated decision and would press home the attack in contravention of the rules of war and hence unethical. This seems to me to be an ethical problem unique to AI. Never before have weapons of war not been under human control. Fourth, who is responsible when things go wrong? This ethical and legal issue arises most obviously in the case of automated vehicles. If an AV is responsible for death, injury, or property damage in a crash, who is responsible? Currently the law is clear. It's the driver. But an AV has no driver. Parliament passed a law last July, the Automated and Electric Vehicles Act, yet to be implemented, but on the statute book, which laid down that the insurer is responsible, unless the AV is uninsured, and that the insurer can then have recourse to the manufacturer or maker of a failing component, such as a software developer, should they subsequently be shown to be at fault. The details don't need to concern us. The point is that Parliament has recognised this uniquely AI-based issue and properly legislated to address it. And it's both an ethical and a legal issue. Perhaps we need an AI to determine where we're going on Brexit. Fifth, AIs impersonating human beings. Last year at the Google I/O conference, Sundar Pichai, the CEO, demonstrated a recording of an AI called Duplex, which first called a beauty parlour to make an appointment for a hairdo, and then a restaurant to make a table reservation. The conversations were sophisticated. The AI negotiated some tricky interactions and said at the appropriate moments. It was quite realistic. Neither human realized that they were talking to a machine. Although the audience applauded, the immediate reaction on social media was that for an AI to fool a person into thinking that they were talking to another person is unethical. The technology may have passed the Turing test, but this is an AI-specific ethical issue. And six, my final category, is explainability. The ability of an AI system to explain its decisions. It's well known that deep learning systems cannot explain their conclusions. Even their developers can't explain how they reach their decisions. In many cases, that doesn't matter. If a language translation AI cannot explain how it translates La plume de ma tante est dans le jardin into English, you don't care. You just want to know that my aunt's quill pen is in the garden. But if a mortgage company uses AI to assess your application, rejects it, and can't explain why, you would be justifiably upset, and that would be, or rather is, unethical. Mortgage lenders may refuse to explain their human decisions, but the inability to do so is a uniquely AI ethical problem. So, many of the issues, the ethical issues that arise in the context of AI are indeed just ethical. But even discounting the scale and speed argument to which Richard alluded, I argue that at least 4 AI-guided weapons or laws, an AV's responsibility for harm, AIs impersonating humans, and explainability are AI-specific ethical issues. Now, I only have to prove 1 to defeat the motion because of the way it's framed, so I urge you to vote against the motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Well, I'd like to open the floor to your thoughts and opinions, but before we start, I think perhaps a few house rules might be needed. We've got time on the agenda now, before we break for pizza and some more wine. And the best thing to do is, if you would like to make a statement, raise an issue for clarification, if you want to put your hand up, then Craig has got a microphone here. This is not so that the rest of the audience can hear you, it's so that it can be captured on our webcams for later transmission. So don't be surprised if you speak and it doesn't boom out everywhere. And in the interests of giving everybody the opportunity who wants to speak, and to keep the debate going, I'm going to I've got a timer here, and I'm going to operate a kind of little timing thing. So if I think you're going on too long, or you might be doing this, sort of winding up, so you know that's, please bring it to an end. If I'm going like this, it means that's really kind of enough. If I go like this, you know that's definitely time up. So, who would like to start us off? Does somebody in the audience want to raise a point of view? Anybody with an opinion? Excellent.
I think the biggest... Hi, Liz. My name's Liz. The big issue is the explainability, because normally we know what's right and wrong. So ethics is ethics, but with AI, you don't know what it's going to give you, and it's the explainability bit, because Facebook's fine, it's wonderful. In the States, they're quite happy to share information, personal data. We're not. But at the end of the day, what's happened with Facebook and Cambridge Analytics is something's happened that we didn't understand. And so I don't know if this is true or not, but the Leave campaign, they actually won because they were using something like Cambridge Analytics to actually target specific people, and we didn't know about that. We were told about that afterwards. So was that ethical? What they did was ethical. It's only now that we're actually looking at those problems and then saying, is this, how did this happen? And is it on the things that Facebook are doing and, promoting, self-abuse on? We didn't realise that's what children would do. I mean, it just seems like extraordinary to me that a child would go onto Facebook and self-abuse and tell the whole world they're doing it. But that's something that's happened, and we don't really understand some of the things. And that's why the explainability to me is the most important thing, why AI and ethics is different to ethics, because our values are going to have to change, I think.
It's a good point. Anybody like to
Do you want me to
respond?
pick that up? Or am I
Please
allowed
do.
to?
Of course
Yeah.
you are.
It's a very good point, explainability, and it's a particular problem with modern deep learning, as it's called. But it's not a problem with other bits of AI. I mean, conventional AI is completely explainable. You can just backtrack. And it's more explainable than you might think. So AlphaGo, for example, which won the famous Go game, it could certainly tell you the moves it was making and how likely it was made by a human. So the usual counter is, do you like Marmite? Do you like Marmite?
Love it.
Okay. Why?
In little doses.
Yeah, but why do you like it? So you can't explain why you like Marmite, so why do you suddenly expect an artificial intelligence which merely models your own brain to be explainable?
It's not an ethical question.
It's a question.
It's not an ethical question. That's
Well,
different.
it
not
is
an
if you're
ethical
threatening me with Marmite, which I know. Do you see the point I'm making? Which is the current legal system that we're in at the moment is very used to dealing with completely irrational and unexplainable intelligences. They're called humans.
Irrational is okay, but ethical is a different issue.
Well,
We're not saying we didn't say irrational.
Explainability
It
was
ethical.
what you were riffing on, and I'm agreeing with you that it is an issue. I would say there's an enormous research programme going on around the world, of which I am part actually, to try and work out what the hell is going on in these black boxes. And my own view is that this will all look a bit of a backwater in a few years' time. So, do you remember when those things weren't explainable? Oh yes, it was terrible, wasn't it? So I think it's a temporary issue. I think everyone in this room makes inexplicable decisions, and the earth has not fallen in because of it.
Lovely.
I was just going to make a point. I work with a company that we use deep learning, and we've made an ethical choice to explain our deep learning, right? So the way that we've written the the code, the algorithms, the way we structure together neural networks together. We have to explain how and why our deep learning makes particular choices to address the issue of racist AI, sexist AI, and the like. So it's an ethical choice to make deep learning explainable.
Excellent. Got a hand up at the back.
I'll stand up so I can be seen. Richard, I was very interested in your point about international consensus about what is permitted in technology and online. And as a full disclosure, as a former Facebook executive, I have first-hand experience of different jurisdictions' delimitations of what is permissible and what isn't, and what is harmful and what isn't. My experience is that we are a very, very long way from getting international consensus on what appropriate online behaviour and content looks like. Do you think when we're thinking about what appropriate AI behaviour looks like, that should be set within the general framework of appropriate technological behaviour, or do you think it's somehow separate from that wider debate?
So, that's a sophisticated question. I'm not sure I understood it, but if you're saying, is it likely that the laws and ethics governing AI will be highly localised? I think yes.
I'm concerned about that.
It's a pain for people like Facebook, but it's the way life is going to be.
I would concur. The most egregious example of the misuse of AI excuse me, is the use of facial recognition by the Chinese government in Xinjiang, the western province of China, and they have used it to incarcerate over 1 million people for no crime whatsoever, and they're in prison. They are effectively in prison. They're starting to defend it rather speciously. Is there any chance of our agreeing with the Chinese government on ethical frameworks? No. And we don't agree with many jurisdictions, many cultures on a variety of other issues. I mean, attitudes to bribery in the Middle East are completely different from in the West, for instance. And so it is. No, it's not the case that we're going to have international agreement, but that doesn't mean that the ethical issues are not the ethical issues.
Good point. Any more?
To that point, does that then mean that the countries who are less ethical then gain a foothold because we are being more ethical in our development?
Yeah, so that was one of my thinkings at the final point, which is there is a market in ethics, I think. And I was thinking of it in terms of a sector. So if a sector decides that it's going to place particularly restrictive behaviours on the application of AI, my view is that can be extremely damaging to that sector. It will miss out. And you see this a little bit in medicine, I think. I hadn't thought of it in terms of countries, but yes, and they can be undercutting, which is what you're implying. Yeah, low standards here, come here. We see that in all other industries, I think. So yes, it seems very likely.
I would say that yes, there is that risk. On the other hand, why do people come to London to trade and to do business? And the answer, to a large extent, is because it's honest and straightforward, and a deal is a deal and is kept. And the judicial system is first class and transparent and honest. And undoubtedly, that makes London an attractive place to do business, and has done for a long time. So it can work both ways. I used to run a company which is training people in bribery, or anti-bribery. That was it. And when we ran a course, you'd start by saying, does anybody think bribery is right? No. And after about 20 minutes, someone codger would always say, Chris, this is very nice, but frankly, if you're doing business in Nigeria or India, wherever they happen to do business, That's the way it works. And if you don't want to do it, and that way lies the perpetuation of bribery, and who pays? The poor, always. So it's up to us, I think, to act ethically and face the fact that in other jurisdictions, life is different.
Excellent, thank you. Just get the mic to you.
So, of the points that you made, I think most of them, except for the explainability one, roughly fall into what I'm a software developer of sorts, so fall into the unintended consequences bin, right? They might be bugs, they might be, oh look, I can use this to target ads. Oh look, I can use it for manipulating elections. There's something maybe coming out in there about thinking through more of the potential uses of what you've built than a lot of people seem to do. And I'm just wondering about your view on unintended consequences being some underlying issue here.
There may be unintended consequences, but that doesn't make them anything other than ethical issues, and to the extent that they're specific to AI, they're specific to AI. And if you take laws, for instance, there's no doubt that the intention is to use the drone to kill people. It's a weapon, that's what it's for. So I would say that's an intended consequence. The unintended consequence, if you like, is that you'll kill innocent people. And international law legislates on the extent to which such collateral damage is permissible. I would argue that law, and many other people argue, that laws go way beyond that.
Any other thoughts on that topic, Charles?
Charles Hughes. I'm fascinated by the concept of having ethics for everything except AI, where we have a separate set of ethical rules. And I'd just like to explore how we determine in difficult cases which set of ethics to apply, and what happens when there is a clash between the two different codes of ethics. Which one takes precedence? And if there is a clash, and we're not quite sure whether it's an AI system or an ML system or something else, then how do we know which code of ethics we applied and whether that was correct? And how do we end up with only two codes of ethics? Or is this not the start of the possibility of having a whole panoply of different codes of ethics, and then we'll have to have a code of ethics to work out how we choose which code of ethics to apply?
I'm not answering that because I agree with you.
Well, I'm not sure that we're ever going to be in a situation where we have to choose. I can't think of an example. Perhaps you can, Charles. But if we look at the issue of AVs killing people or causing damage, the fact that the government has, Parliament has passed a law distinguishing between liability in the case of ordinary vehicles and liability in the case of AI-driven automated vehicles, there's some evidence, I think, that it's possible. Now, that's a legal implementation of an ethical principle. Some ethical principles don't need legal backup and some do. But I can't, it's a fascinating question, but I can't quite think of any other examples.
Can anyone help us out here? Or Daniel?
I guess what would happen if your automated radar braking broke too hard and you went through the windscreen because you weren't wearing a seatbelt or something like that. So, like, your vehicle has an automated system that brakes for you,
Right.
but it somehow fails and it mysteriously hurts someone. So there's a human in control, but a machine has taken control from the human.
Yes, but presumably you would, the injured human would sue the manufacturer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that situation because it came to mind when Chris was talking. I mean, of course, this has happened already. There was a very well-known case of an American vehicle which set off its airbags every time you drove past a radio antenna, which was extremely unfortunate, and somebody died because of it. It didn't create any new ethical issues, and if you want, you can say, oh, an AI set off the airbags, because it acted like it. It was completely unexplainable. It was an external thing which just randomly set off the airbags. What did they do? Well, they're Americans. They sued, of course. You know, they sued the manufacturers. There were no new ethical considerations at all. It was completely handled without any debate. No need to sue the radio manufacturer. You sue the person for not making something robust against an external influence.
Any other thoughts? Oh, David?
David Collison, a question for Chris about the drones. So how does a strategic decision to deploy drones with the consequent collateral damage, how does that differ from a strategic decision in World War II to invoke carpet bombing or dropping a bomb on Hiroshima? In both cases, the precision won't be there. In both cases, there will inevitably be collateral damage. Why is that strategic decision with drones any different to a wartime decision in past eras?
Well, my only answer is that the decision to carpet bomb or to drop the atom bomb on Hiroshima was made by a human being, and a human being pressed that button. But collateral damage, of course, huge, and that can happen, and it does happen. But I think there's a qualitative difference between a human being making the decision and a machine making the decision. The consequences may be no different.
I suppose that depends on what point in time is the point at which the decision is made, because surely it's the launch of the attack that is the point of the ethical decision being made, rather than the mechanical aspect of unleashing the bullet or the bomb or whatever.
Yes, but as I argued, a human-controlled drone, it's launched, and then the operator can abort the mission, and they do quite frequently. Whereas, yes, you launch the machine and you launch the AI drone, the laws, and then once it's taken over, you've lost all control.
So I'm not contrast with past methods of warfare that I was interested in, rather than the contrast between the two ways of controlling the current method. Thank you.
I'm not arguing in terms of the consequences, because the consequences can be dire in both cases.
And I think I can see some more hands up, but in particular, if I can steer maybe some of your thinking to think about some of the questions that our charities might be facing, also, if that's helping anybody else frame their thoughts, but don't let me interrupt what you were thinking of.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've already got the microphone. So I just want to add that I think we need to
It won't
distinguish.
boom. It's just
We need to distinguish between the effects of progress and the effects of AI, because of course we can have AI without progress, and we can have progress without AI. To respond to your question, the effects of, for example, the Russian system, which would initiate nuclear war if there was an American launch. This wasn't AI at all. This was a simple switch, and yet it has the same vastly inflated consequences as an AI system could. And my other examples of this, we have, for example,
Just speak up a bit, Finton, we can't quite hear you.
Yeah, we have, for example, Airbnb. So Airbnb is not an AI system. It simply relies on everyone having a phone. Uber is really similar. And we have, in these cases, to make the choices, is Airbnb really a hotel? Is Uber really a taxi company? And these are questions that we can only answer by achieving consensus.
Excellent. Now, I just want to capture in my mind all the people who've got their hands about to be raised, because what I'd like to do is I can see outside there a little bit of rustling, which means keep those hands up for when we come back. And if you'd like to pop outside, we've got a nice half-an-hour break to have some pizza, replenish your glasses, and we'll call you back in half an hour. Thank you very much.